let's go ahead and talk about your goals. Your goals are, these are going to follow a very similar format to what we talked about in apologetics. And a couple of them are going to be a little bit similar, but not too similar. The first external goal, remember, these are goals that are outside of prep time, outside of the round, things that you do before a tournament even comes around, or even through the summer when there is no speech and debate. The first thing you want to focus on is learning to constructively criticize the things around you. Constructively criticize movies, books, songs, anything you hear. Think through, what is this trying to say to me? Think through the message of your favorite songs, movies, or books. Think through what it's trying to say. When you sit down and watch Star Wars for the 70 millionth time, ask yourself, what are they trying to communicate here? Now the answer for that one should be pretty simple. But for others it might be a little more complex. Really just ask yourself, look, what is this trying to communicate to me? What is this trying to say to me? What should I understand? What should I come out of this thinking if I watch this movie in the way the director wanted me to? If a director is trying to communicate something to me, one sentence, what is that thing? Constantly try to diagnose what that is, even as you watch new movies, even as you watch movies that are coming out, go to the theater. Just think through a little bit. Don't spend the whole time constructively criticizing the movie, because then you just don't enjoy it. But spend a little bit of time thinking, what is this trying to say to me? Be willing to critique something even if you enjoy this. This isn't hard for somebody like me who enjoys something more the more I critique it. The more I critique something, it's like, hey, yeah, now I really love this movie. For some people, though, they just don't want to critique their favorite book. I love this. I love bringing up Harry Potter, because all the Harry Potter people are like, no, how dare you criticize it? And I'm like, hey. Basically, don't be afraid to critique something even if you enjoy it, because it's still trying to communicate something to you. And the ones you enjoy the most can actually be the most dangerous and the most detrimental if they're communicating a negative message. If you don't understand what something is saying, but you really love it, you continually take it in, you try to immerse yourself in that worldview, then it's going to be a lot of fun. Just so you guys know, if you guys want a challenge, if you guys want to watch a movie where you have to really think about what the message is, watch any Christopher Nolan movie that's ever been made, and you will spend literally weeks in your room like, really? No way. No, oh, maybe. It's just so much fun. I'm sorry. Okay. Always go deeper. Sometimes a message can be buried beneath very innocent things. Don't just go with the surface. Don't just go with what jumps out to you and then move on. Go a little bit deeper. Go a little bit below the surface. People will oftentimes use, has anyone ever given medicine to a pet or something? You know how you wrap it in cheese or whatever so they actually eat it? It's kind of like that. Sometimes movies or books or songs will wrap their message in what seems like a really good thing. So if you just go surface level, if you're just like, cheese, then you're going to eat the pill without realizing what it is you just did. Maybe that's a pill of cyanide because you hate that stupid dog. Basically, always go deeper. Always go below the cheese level. Go below... Yeah, always go below the level where you see something and go just a little bit deeper. Challenge yourself to say, is this really what they're saying? Now sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes that's just a piece of cheese laying on the ground and you're like, okay, cool, I get to eat cheese now. But sometimes there is a deeper perspective, there is a deeper truth there that you're going to have to diagnose. External goal 2. Understand worldviews. Now, this is a little bit less important now that worldviews are off the ballots and off the emphasis, but nonetheless, it is still really important to understand worldviews as you go into watching films, as you go into trying to prepare for Mars Hill. Here's why. Worldviews are the overarching way that people view the world. So every decision that somebody makes, everything that somebody believes, everything that somebody communicates is going to be in the context of that worldview. Is going to be in the context of the coherent way that they fit the world together. Whatever director you watch a movie of is going to have a worldview. It's usually going to be a worldview that he's trying to communicate. For instance, never mind. But basically, just understand worldviews. You're going to see many competing worldviews believe your beliefs and the topics. Usually the themes that you're going to discuss in a Mars Hill speech, the themes like, say, a power for identity, a struggle for power, or a struggle for identity, those are the themes you're going to see. Those are all going to be dictated by what the worldview is. It is phenomenal that you don't have to spend speech time talking about that worldview anymore, but the worldview is still important to understand because it is still the basis, it is still the background for that theme. It is still the reason why that theme is, and it helps you to interpret the movie as well. For instance, if you go and watch a movie from a director who has professed to be an existentialist, understand what that means and start to analyze that movie in that context. Say, what would an existentialist be trying to communicate here? What would an existentialist be trying to say here? Always make sure that you understand these competing worldviews before you start to try to diagnose what a theme might be. Make an effort to understand these worldviews so you can use them effectively. The only way that you can even reference them well in a speech, and even though worldviews aren't about, you still might use them occasionally from time to time to say, look, here's what this worldview is, here's how that manifests itself, here's what we can see as the theme, here are the other impacts of that worldview, therefore bad. Make an effort to understand them so you can use them effectively. If you stand up and start talking about Eastern mysticism and you have no idea what the heck it is, people are going to tell. So don't do that. Okay, this will also help you in life too. Understanding worldviews will give you the ability to challenge people in the world around you, as well as just see worldviews as you move on in your life. See worldviews in certain things. See just how materialistic our country is. See how much we all gravitate towards that worldview without even realizing it. Make sure that you understand these worldviews. That will be really helpful in instructing you on how to construct your Mars Hill speeches. Let's talk about your internal goals. Your first internal goal is going to be like one of those yeah duh things. But you want to make sure that you speak truth. I talked about this in all of my lectures, all my camps, because I think this is the most important part of speech and debate as a whole. The most important thing you're going to need to realize is that you need to speak truth. You need to speak what you believe in, and that is more important than anything else. Your primary purpose is to speak the truth in all of your speeches. Remember, you're building a bridge. You're making that connection point between a theme of the topic and a Christian worldview. The only way you can do that is by speaking what you believe is true, by speaking that Christian worldview, by speaking the truth that you can find, the truth that you have confidence in. That is the only way you're going to be able to effectively build that bridge. Has anyone ever seen a bridge that is just connected to one side of a canyon and isn't connected to the other one? It's just kind of flopping. And anyone want to drive on that bridge? Anyone want to walk on that bridge? Anyone want to send their cat across that bridge? Nobody? Yeah. Okay. You don't have a cat! Alright, the reason that we speak the truth is so the other end of that bridge is sound. So the Christian worldview side of that bridge is actually connected to the other side of the canyon. So it's actually connected to where you're trying to get to. If you cannot speak the truth, if that side is not structurally sound, then it's going to leave people in a worse state than they were before. It's going to lead them crashing down into the river where if it's anything like Indiana Jones, there are alligators down there. That's bad. So your primary purpose is to speak truth in your speeches. Scriptures also call us to speak the truth in love. Does somebody in this room need to work on that? Yes. You need to make sure that when you are speaking the truth, you speak that truth in a way that is empathetic, that you speak that truth with compassion, because as we just talked about a second ago, 1 Corinthians 13:13, the most important thing is love. You can have faith, you can have hope all you want, but love is the most important thing that we have to focus on having for the people around us. Make sure that you are speaking that truth in the context of love. Now that takes different forms for different people. Different people communicate love and compassion in different ways. Some people do it by telling personal stories and being like, hey look, this is what's happened to me, maybe this has happened to you as well. I want to talk about that for a second. That's not the way that I communicate compassion when I'm giving a speech. I communicate compassion by trying to understand the intellectual perspective that somebody's coming from. Look, some of you might have said this, and I totally get that. I was at a point like that in my life too. But here's the things that I thought through to get to the end of that. Always speak the truth in love, but figure out how you communicate love and compassion in order to be able to do that. The only way to effectively communicate what you believe is to say what you believe is true. Now, this should make a lot of sense to you. The only way to communicate truth is to speak truth. If you don't speak truth, you're probably not going to communicate truth. And if you do communicate truth, it's because you did something so monumentally wrong that you communicated something diametrically opposed to what you said, in which case you had a really bad speech, but it worked out okay. The ends don't justify the means, though. So make sure that you are speaking truth so that you communicate truth, so that the message you are giving to somebody is the truth that you believe in. Be intentional in the way you construct this. Never just stand up and give a speech because you have to give a speech. Be intentional with what you're trying to communicate and make sure that that communication is effective. Internal goal 2. This might sound familiar. It should sound familiar because I talked about it like half an hour ago. Introduce hope. In every single situation, introduce a hope that you have. Many times, the worldview or theme of a main topic can be dark and or depressing. Who has ever heard of the worldview absurdism?
Wait, what?
Absurdism. Okay. Albert Camus, great guy, weird, psychotic Frenchman, came up with this concept. Well, he didn't come up with it, but he was one of the main proponents of it, called absurdism, wherein the struggle to find meaning in life is fundamentally absurd. Where we should all just give up on trying to have any purpose in our lives whatsoever and just live them like it doesn't really matter if they end the next day. That's really depressing. Like, the things you're talking about are going to be things that make you, if you think about them, a little bit sad sometimes. That make you like, oh wow, that's really depressing. Or even if you read some of the books or watch some of the movies, it can seem really dark. Like, who thinks Phantom of the Opera is a really light, fluffy story? Nobody? Okay. Like, when you get to the end, it like breaks your heart. Like, come on! It's like, ah! Sometimes you're going to be in a very dark and depressing place, especially as you start to watch movies, but especially as you start to try to communicate them. It can be really hard to say, look, here's when we get to the end of this. It's so depressing. We see all this horrible stuff happen, but Jesus! Like, that sounds a little exaggerated, but that's kind of what you have to do. And here's why I say that. There are those times when you just have to show the light and warmth of God. One of my favorite quotes is by A.W. Tozer, and I'm going to absolutely butcher it, so this is a paraphrase, but he in essence said that Jesus on the cross was like a lightning rod that channeled the wrath of God like a lightning bolt onto that one singular place, leaving only the light and warmth of His love to remain for all of us. I think it's kind of a similar concept here. What we're doing is we're focusing on all of these things, but we're trying to show the light and warmth that there is in a Christian worldview. The light and warmth, the hope that we have, the answers that we have. Your purpose should be to know what you believe, but also communicate why that gives you hope. So when you get to the end of a really dark and depressing story, when you get to the end of Phantom of the Opera, you can actually say, look, there is actually hope in this story somewhere. Sure, you have to look for it, but there is hope here. There is something that you can believe in, something you can hold on to, some last final light that you can grab onto, even at the end of the most dark and depressing times. The only way you can do this is by introducing the hope that you have and the hope that we all have in Christ and the light and warmth of God. We are called to focus on the hope that is inside of us through God. Look, the hope that we have is something that dictates everything that we do. Philosophers like Sigmund Freud said that we are all motivated by our base desires. And in a sense, I would agree with him, and here's why. Because we are motivated by our base desire, but our base desire is not for whatever wacko thing he was coming up with that Sunday. Our base desire is to try to find joy. Our base desire is to try to find hope. Our base desire is to try to find somewhere, something where we feel like we belong. The only way we can do that is by first focusing on the hope that we have. I know I've hammered home this point a lot, and that's because it is super, 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 super important. The only way that you can effectively communicate something, especially a worldview or a theme, is if you leave them with hope. Is if you make sure that the world you are describing is miles better than the world they are now. For all my TPers in this room, what you do when you write a 1AC is you say, look, the world I am giving you is a better world than the one of the status quo. Exactly the same concept. You say, this is the harms of the status quo, here are the impacts, here's the solvency of God. Basically, that's the concept. Just try to introduce hope. Make sure you have good solvency. Have a plan advocate or two. Make sure you fit that all in there. But yeah, introduce hope. Make sure you leave them with somewhere to go, some place to keep going up, some place to find some sort of comfort, even in the midst of the most depressing stories that all of your moms would cry at the end of. Okay. Internal goal 3, build a bridge. Building a bridge is a term that is used a lot in Mars Hill, and it's kind of an analogy of what you're supposed to do. So I want to explore the analogy a little bit. I already kind of talked about the analogy, but what we're doing when we're giving a Mars Hill speech is we're building a bridge from one point to another. Paul was so effective in Acts 17 because he built a bridge. He said, look, you believe this, you even have so many gods, you obviously have a desire to have gods that cover all of your needs, gods that can cover everything you can think of. That was the start of the bridge. That was one side of the bridge. He said, look, you're all looking for something. Let me show you how I can satisfy that. It was the second part. Let me show you how I have an answer, a solution to your problems. It was the other side of the bridge. He constructed those 2 points, and because of that, he was effective in his communication. Make sure people can come to your side, don't strand them. So remember, when you're building a bridge, you're trying to connect their side to your side. If you just build the side of the bridge over here by the Christian worldview and just talk about the Bible, you're going to strand them over there because they're not going to be able to get across that unless they're like the long jump champion or something like that. Conversely, if somebody is over here, you're just building the bridge over here on the topic, you're not talking about the biblical worldview at all, they're going to be stranded over here because they're only going to be able to get across half the bridge, and then they're going to walk off thinking that you have the rest of the bridge, and they're going to fall into the river and get eaten by alligators. So that is generally not advisable. So make sure you don't strand them. Make sure people can actually come to your side. You want them to come to your side because you have cookies. All right. To construct a bridge is to build, not to destroy. This is one of the most important things I think I learned as I was doing Mars Hill. Your goal is not to criticize culture. Your goal is not to show why topics are communicating a theme that is stupid. When we're building a bridge, it is an act of creation, not an act of destruction. You are not destroying something. You are saying, look, you are so close. You are almost there. You are this close to being able to get to where you truly want to be. Let me just give you that last step. Let me just add that last support structure so your bridge doesn't fall over the instant an 18-wheeler passes over it. Let me make sure that your bridge is strong by giving you that last puzzle piece. Has anyone ever gotten to the end of a puzzle and there's like 2 pieces missing and you're really bugged by that? And you just sit there looking at the puzzle for like weeks because you're trying to find those pieces still because you don't want to stop doing the 2,000-piece puzzle that you worked for 8 months on, but you can't find the last 2 pieces. It's kind of like that. The assumption is that people in this world are so close, they're just 2 puzzle pieces away from being able to figure out their worldview, from being able to find hope, find success. What you want to do is you want to give them those last 2 puzzle pieces. Be like your mom and say, look, I found these under your pillowcase. I don't know why they were under your pillowcase, but here they are. And you fit those last 2 puzzle pieces in and you're like, yes, I have completed something. That's what you want to do here. You do not want to destroy somebody's worldview. You do not want to absolutely wreck someone's perspective like I thought it was the first 2 years of Marcel. You want to build. You want to make sure that they are completing, that they are becoming more whole in who they are, that their identity is becoming more full, not that it is becoming less full. So yes, that's all I had for that lecture.